Hello, Saturnians! Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome! I'm so happy you're here. Please say hello in the comments so that I can talk to you and know who you are. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I post videos every single week. Okay, so a few days ago, I made a video about my favorite cards in a tarot deck, but not the obvious cards, not those that, everybody loves to get. So this time I thought I would show you the cards that are wonderful cards, but that I don't always love to see in my own readings. Every single card has a light and a shadow aspect, and there are cards that seem to come up quite often for me in their negative aspect, even though they're wonderful cards. So I will show you these ones today. By the way, big thanks to Hauki Rain the Woke Witch, Asteria Sen, Amethyst Ascension, Aries Witchcraft, and Lennon Smith, because these wonderful ladies all made VRs to my video about my non-obvious favorite tarot cards, and I was delighted to see their responses. So I'm going to leave the link for their videos down below, and you can go and watch them too because they're awesome. Right, let's get started with my non-obvious least favorite cards. I know this is a surprise for many, but I tend to see the negative and shadow side of the cards that we consider to be great cards as the worst kinds of shadow. Because when we get a difficult card like the Tower or the Nine of Swords or the Ten of Wands, the shadow aspect is literally on my face. It is, screaming at us. However, we tend to dismiss the shadow sides of the great cards, and people, let me tell you, I consider that the shadow aspects of the very good cards as way more problematic than the shadow side of an already difficult card. There is no confusion when I get the Tower and say the Ten of Swords. It is very clear what is going on here. Something needs to end. And it will be painful, but yeah, it's kind of obvious. But then sometimes we get great cards like the Star and the High Priestess in the challenge position in a spread. And in my experience, we tend to dismiss them as negative cards that have a very dark aspect as well, because we are used to see these cards as great cards. So I'll talk about the Star and the High Priestess because they're both great cards that have a very shadow aspects, and I see them quite often, both for me and for my clients. So I'll start with the Star. Heads up for this Star from the Tarot of the Witches. I love this Star so much because it's so weird. Look at her face. Okay, so here's the situation. The Star for me is about the belief that everything works in perfect harmony, that cosmic justice is always accomplished, that things always turn out for the best. So we know that when the Star appears in a reading, it means we should have faith. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There is hope and help from above. And we will get what we want, right? Right? Well, hopefully yes, but sometimes, especially if the Star is reversed or in a challenging position in the spread, it means that we are hoping things, expecting things to happen, that we are relying on the belief that things always turn out for the best, when in reality, we're doing nothing. We're not doing what it takes to make those good things happen to us. A person who is always praying for God or the angels to help them, but they don't do anything to change their situation. And if you ask them, they say they have faith, therefore they will be rewarded and everything will work out well. And I'm like, yeah, but just in case, you do your job, you do what you need to do. Don't sit there and just pray and wait for things to happen. And I am aware that being in a positive state of mind attracts good outcomes, but being in a positive state of mind for me is the opposite of inertia. You work hard because you are in such a positive state of mind that you are happy to work and collect the results. This is why you work towards your goal. The symptoms of being positive in your mindset is to have the motivation to get up and do what needs to be done. This means that you are in a positive state of mind. If you're not doing this, then it's not a positive state of mind. It is just an empty faith disguised as a positive mindset. So if I keep seeing the star in a challenge position, my job is to investigate whether I am just relying on false hope and if I'm doing what I need to do to get the outcome that I want. And that applies to my spells as well, only so that you know. I have a similar feeling towards the High Priestess. She's about intuition, finding the truth within, but she's a very passive card also, in the sense that she receives knowledge. She doesn't really need to make an effort to understand things. She's like a vessel. When she appears in a reading, it usually means that intuition is the key, and that knowledge is not going to come through formal education, and more through the knowings of the heart. So, because the High Priestess is such a good card, sometimes we don't see the shadow aspect of it, which in my opinion is very, very dark. Here is the thing. Sometimes we confuse intuition with personal bias and fears. You know, when you don't like a person for no reason, they just give you a bad feeling, but you cannot pinpoint why. Well, the shadow side of the High Priestess sometimes means that we are projecting our own stuff on others, and that bad feeling towards another person has to do with our own shadow and very little to do with the other person who's probably innocent. You know, sometimes what we call intuition is just prejudice, and we want to validate our prejudice, so we call it intuition. I sometimes see people who call themselves empaths, and of course I'm not saying that all people who are empaths are like that. I'm just pointing out that this is something that the empaths have to pay attention to, because I see them sometimes making this mistake. They think they are feeling what someone else is feeling, but they might have their own personal reasons to be feeling the way they're feeling. And they try to justify that feeling by saying that, they're just feeling what somebody else is feeling. And sometimes I wonder if this is not a severe case of projection or fear of being assertive and owning your own personal reasons to do things. Of course, that I am not saying again that this is what empaths do all the time. But I wonder if this is what happens when I keep seeing the High Priestess reversed or in a challenge position in a tarot spread. There is another aspect of the High Priestess that not many people talk about, and I think it's one of the darkest aspects of the High Priestess, because the High Priestess is about intuition. Sometimes we are in situations that using intuition is not going to help us. We need exact science there. Okay, so imagine that you are a surgeon and that you need to open a patient. You need to cut them open. I don't know, maybe you're performing heart surgery, and you cannot afford to make a mistake there. You cannot afford to use your intuition only to do that. It is an exact science. You need to rely on years and years and years of formal education to be able to cut a patient open and perform heart surgery. And what happens here is that sometimes I see the High Priestess appearing in people's readings in the challenge position. And when I see this, I wonder whether they're trying to solve an issue using their intuition, but they actually need professional help. They actually need exact science. They actually need to, go back to formal education. Sometimes it happens. Now, don't get me wrong. If the High Priestess shows up in the advice position, then that's great. I just think that sometimes people tend to dismiss the good cards in challenging positions. Right. Next is the Chariot. And I'll tell you why. When I started becoming aware of astrological associations, I couldn't wrap my head around the Chariot being the Cancer card. Because for me, the Chariot is about moving forward, moving ahead. It is an active card, a fire card, while Cancer is a water passive sign. So it made me very confused back in the days. It was the 90s and internet was not a thing, so I only had the books that my parents had in their library. So I could not understand this association. You see in this depiction of the Chariot, this guy is determined, moving forward, actively going towards his destination. And we all know that crabs actually walk sideways. I don't mean to say Cancerians can't be very determined. In fact, many important people in my life are Cancerians, and they're also very fierce. But what was off for me is that Cancer is watery and passive, astrologically speaking, and the Chariot is active and fiery, so the symbolism was just not right for me. This is the card that took me the longest to understand. So how can that be? But as the years went by and my tarot collection grew, I encountered depictions of the Chariot that were completely different, and I will show you a few examples. Like in this Ukiyo-e tarot, the lady inside the Chariot is not really seeing the way. She's being taken by others. She's being carried to her destination. So I can see the passive energy here rather than the active. We could see the people carrying her as the senses and the emotions, or even the body. One thing about Cancerians is that their lives can be completely led by their feelings and emotions. It's a sign ruled by the moon, and the moon is always changing, like the mood of Cancer people. They make emotional decisions all the time, so it makes sense that this lady being carried by others to her destination actually means she's being governed by her emotions, her senses. In the Tarot of the Spirit, we can also see that this person is faceless. He has no eyes, so he doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't need to see with the physical eyes because his heart is what is taking him. And here is one depiction I love in the Bush Tarot. This creature is being taken by a fish and a couple of small dogs. The interesting thing here is that the fish rightly represents the watery nature of this card, and the dogs are not big enough to carry the weight of the Chariot. And to make it worse, the creature also has his face concealed by the helmet. So he also has no idea where he's going, and soon enough the little dogs will be exhausted. So, when we have no control of our feelings and emotions, we all know that we can get drained and exhausted. Exhausted of feeling too much. We end up going to very dark places because we were not seeing the way. We were just being taken by our emotions. The higher self was never present. And for me, this is the shadow side of the Chariot. When I get the Chariot in a challenging position, or the Chariot reversed, the first thing that I ask myself is, do I know where I'm going? Or am I just making an emotional decision that will lead me somewhere that I don't even want to go in the first place? Where will this Chariot take me? Where are my emotions and senses taking me? Who is in control? My higher self or my emotions and my senses? Some people associate the Chariot with the body and, the person as the higher self. So in order for this to work, the higher self has to be leading the Chariot and not the other way around. Right, so these are the major arcana, and I'll try to be quicker with the minors. I have a court card now, the Page of Pentacles. So this is my least favorite of the court people. The element of this card is earth plus earth. Look at this fellow, he looks so bored and annoyed. And you know why he's annoyed? He cannot see beyond the material world, beyond the obvious things. He's extremely materialistic and pragmatic. I know, sometimes it's great to get this card if you're asking the cards about some material thing or a very concrete, pragmatic project. It's a good card to get. But for me, this card is telling me that I'm not seeing beyond the obvious. The focus is too much on the mundane side of things. Sometimes I interpret the court people by observing the element that is lacking in the card. So all court people of pentacles are earthy, but the king also has fire, the queen also has water, the knight also has air, yet this guy is pure meta. So once upon a time, long time ago, I had an office job, believe it or not, like a 9-to-5 kind of job. Even worse, it was 8 to 6 because that's the norm here in Brazil. This torture lasted for 5 years, but it's long behind me now. And I worked in the corporate world for 5 years. So I remember being all excited after a job interview because it was good money. I was after some sense of stability. And when asking about the job, I kept getting a yes from the tarot, but I also kept getting the Page of Pentacles. And it's exactly how I felt about this job after a while. It was only about getting the money and stability, but there was no enthusiasm, no spark, no joy, no sense of fulfillment, only work for the sake of material life. So the excitement didn't last very long. Likewise, the Queen of Cups, the King of Wands, and the Knight of Swords are all of them their own element without another element to counterbalance. But in my humble experience, the Page of Pentacles is my least favorite combination. Now, I'm going to show you the Six of Cups because sometimes I also don't like to get this card. It sometimes appears to me to be about something that can no longer be or should no longer be. Now, in the thought system, this card actually means enjoying sexual pleasure and having the opportunity to please yourself because there is a balance between animal instinct and the spiritual self. The problem of the Five of Cups has been overcome, so I like to get the Six of Cups when I am using the thought system. But in this Rider-Waite-Smith system, I tend to sometimes, depending on the position it falls in the spread, to see this card as very nostalgic, like a desire to go back to an old sensation of safety and security. It's about the fear of moving forward to an unknown situation. You see in these cards, it's like the return to a very pure, innocent situation, and I think this card hides the fear of the unknown. The Six of Cups would rather be safe and sound and enjoy the sensation of being loved and nurtured, never leaving the comfort zone, never leaving the clan where they were brought up. Now, all of this that I am saying depends on the position the card falls in the spread. If you read reversals or not, the surrounding cards, etc. So don't take these meanings as set in stone, okay? Finally, I want to show you the Two of Pentacles. Now, in my video about my non-obvious favorite cards, I said that I love the Two of Swords because it indicates we may not be aware that we actually have a choice, and it's a good sign. But here in the Pentacles suit, instead of making a choice, we try to balance things. But sometimes this card means fear of choosing. We don't want to let go of anything or any of the things that we're holding on to. So we end up keeping everything but not being able to do anything right for fear of letting go. And I am a Virgo, so I am hyper-focused. And if you want to torture me, you ask me to do a million things at the same time. I need to focus one thing at a time. I prefer doing one thing really well than doing several things badly. And this card sometimes also means that because we can't let go, we end up not giving the importance we should to something that demands our attention. I find this card to be a bad card for relationships. Maybe you are not someone's priority. They have too much going on in their lives. Or maybe you are not paying attention to your partner's needs because you are worried about other things as well. So in the challenge position, this card means that we are not prioritizing. We cannot focus on anything because we have too much going on. And I not always like to get the Two of Pentacles because of that. Right, so I don't want this video to be too long. It's already quite long, so I'm going to stop here. But I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.